Hey everybody! Today we have a special guest star on the vlog. Her name is Katie. She is one of my best friends and one of my critique partners, and she visited me this past weekend and we shot this video that I'm about to show you. My camera, unsurprisingly, had some technical difficulties, as it apparently does every time I try to use it, so it cut off the beginning of the video, so you missed the introductions, hence me doing this. Anyway, she's an amazing writer and an amazing friend, an incredible critique partner. So in this video, we're talking about our critique partner relationship, what that means, and we go from there. But we began the discussion with a definition of a critique partner, so you're gonna catch the end of that. I think it's enough to make sense, but feel free to leave any questions in the comments and I'll be sure to answer them. Okay, enjoy. I will say, I think that there's a difference between a critique partner and like a beta reader, because I feel like a lot of times people use them interchangeably, and they are similar, but in my mind they're kind of different, because a beta reader tends to be less of a like intense ongoing relationship. Like it's somebody who reads a finished draft and gives you feedback, which is something a critique partner does too, but I feel like there's more back and forth with a critique partner. It's not necessarily always about a draft. It can be about ideas or about brainstorming or about working through problems and stuff like that too.
Right, and it's back and forth with similar types of things. And you don't have to like the same things or be writing the same things, but to be a critique partner, I think you have to understand how one another works well, and then be able to work well with one another.
I think probably the next thing we want to talk about is, I guess we can talk about like how we became critique partners. I will say that our relationship formed in a very unusual way, because we were friends first.
Right.
And we became critique partners kind of not accidentally, but like we didn't sit down and say, I would like to be critique partners with you. It's just you got me into writing and then I started writing and then we started sharing.
It was a very natural progression, because we shared so many different parts of our lives. So we started sharing our made up worlds as well as our real worlds.
And it worked out.
And it worked out.
There's really no right or wrong way to become critique partners, obviously. Whatever works for you works for you, and you're gonna have different relationships with different people, like even within that group. So like I have other critique partners who I met totally in different ways. It can happen very organically, and it might not always happen, and it might not always work out long term.
I had a critique partner who I've talked about before with you. He was a poet, and I write fiction. We'd been in enough classes together that we knew each other well. We knew each other's writing well. He knew my fiction well. I knew his poetry well. So even though we had different like directions and disciplines, we were still good critique partners until we reached a point where we no longer needed that relationship from one another, and that his work had progressed to a point where I wasn't particularly helpful to him anymore. My writing developed a lot and changed and focused a lot. And then it was no longer good for me either.
And that's something I think that is important to remember, that that's not a bad thing necessarily, like that people are going to change, writing is going to change, and it's totally natural and totally fine for you to seek out new people and new perspectives, and maybe to wean yourself off of old ones if they're not helpful for you, or if you're not being helpful for the other person. And that would bring me to probably my number one tip for a good critique partner relationship. Do you want to know what it is?
Yes, I do. I have an idea.
I would say my number one tip for a critique partner relationship is communication.
Yay!
Use your words, children, as John Green would say. I think it's really important throughout every stage of the relationship to make sure that you're being totally upfront with what you expect from them and what you expect from yourself, and to get feedback on what they expect from you. And that could be things like deadlines, like if you want your piece back with feedback in a certain time frame, what kind of feedback you want, like if you want more macro or versus micro or both, or if you're looking for feedback on like, I don't know,
a specific problem
like if a plot point's not working, you don't think, or do you want to know if it's working? So things like that. I think it's important to be clear with what you want from them, and to expect them to be clear with what they want from you. I mean, that's true for any relationship, really,
But your work will suffer if you don't, and it'll be an added stressor, and you don't need any more stressors. You're already writing. It's hard enough. Well, I think we should talk about what you need to look for in a critique partner. And how to reach that point. How do you know that I want to be a critique partner with this person? Just things like, you need to know how they critique.
Yes.
So what's natural for them? And you need to know your strengths and your weaknesses. And Kayla is really amazing at the macro level. She sees the big picture. She can like look into something and go, the pacing sucks. What were you thinking? That she doesn't ever say that.
No.
But
I hope I don't.
she sees the big picture a lot better than I do. I don't see that. I am in all the little nitty gritty type of details and I love it.
But that's really helpful for me. This is literally a thing that happened. I wrote like a 600-word short story and I gave it to Katie and she sent it back with like 50 comments and they were all perfect and they were all wonderful and I was like, this is so great because it was all focused on like details like, okay, well, this image isn't quite strong enough or this word doesn't quite convey what I think you want it to. And then I edited it and then I sent it back and she sent it back again with like another 30 comments and we did it like 8 times and it was great and every time she was picking out more and more details that I hadn't even thought about and like every round was just making it stronger and stronger and tighter and it was great because like that's one of the things that I think you really excel at. You excel at a lot of things but just focusing on like the very tiny little pieces.
So something that I'm weak in, you're strong in.
Yes.
And vice versa. So we work well together because we bring out different things in one another's work.
Yeah.
And we focus on those things and make them stronger. So that's something to look for. It's just like how the other person works and what they're good at and what you're good at and do you think that'll be comparable?
Yeah.
And even things like how you critique. So like Kayla just said, I will write 50 comments on a 600-word
Not an exaggeration.
story. Not an exaggeration. I get focused on the like, okay, we can make this better, we can make this better, and this better. And I forget sometimes to put in that, oh, I love this image, or that is the most beautiful phrase. I have to frequently like go back through and be like, okay, I know that I tend to forget to like put in how excited I am about it. And it's very important, by the way, to be encouraging.
Yes.
As well as just talking about like things to strengthen. So again, some introspection. You need to know how you work, but you also need to know how the other person works.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, like your comments like to one another like don't make sense.
Yeah.
That might be more than just a communication thing. That might just be how you work.
Yeah.
And you might not be compatible in that way for that reason.
Yeah.
And for different projects, you need different things.
True.
Like this past one, I was pretty secure in where I was with the story, but when I got here this weekend, I was like, okay, can we talk about things you liked? Sometimes you need a little hand-holding, and it's okay to communicate that. It's a perfectly valid place to like mentally be in.
Yes.
For you to work that direction.
And it's important that you have somebody that you feel comfortable with saying that. Like saying, I'm feeling really insecure about this right now, and I need you to like handle, like you said.
Yeah, and some people will be really good at different parts of the process. Like Kayla is amazing with editing. She loves editing. She adores it.
I do.
I love drafting. And that's the stage I'm kind of in now for one project.
A little bit.
So I am just over the moon happy.
I'm in that stage too right now of drafting, and I'm like, I'm tearing all of my hair out.
So it's good in this stage because I can like help talk through things with you. Now, when we get to the next stage in one of my projects where I have to start querying and I have to start different things like that, I'm going to be relying on Kayla.
And yet again, another example of how we balance.
We do.
I think that's a good point too, is balance in terms of the process and in terms of like your likes and your dislikes, not only your strengths and your weaknesses.